Going.
Give me one.
Hey, welcome to the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim, and I'm here with my good friend, John Lacombe from Westlot Pirates. We are talking Northwestern Wildcats. John, how you doing?
Not bad. Thanks for having us on. Again, I say us. I'm so used to going with the other boys with Sam and Scuzz, but we were saying right off the top, we were kind of talking right before we got on. We're so knee deep in a mixture of spring everything and then Northwestern Nation's consternation over whether or not our basketball coach is going to sign an extension. I'm just happy to talk football. You wanted to talk football? I'm like, let's do it. I feel like we haven't talked football in forever.
We need a distraction from the spring. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and yeah, we're about 6 months away, maybe 5.5 months away. So I think it's appropriate. Spring ball is in session. First, before we kind of go into it, obviously you guys are our Northwestern affiliate for the College Huddle. Just talk a little bit about your podcast.
Gosh, we've been going. So as a frame of reference, we just this past week, we did our yearly bracketology podcast with our friend of the pod, Scott Sepich. And next year, that segment, which we have done every year of the pod, will be old enough to drive. It will be year 16 of us doing that. And it was really kind of a real look in the mirror moment for all of us to be like, wow, this thing has been going for that long, but it has. We've just been in this space and really, for years and years. I mean, and there have been other, I think, Northwestern pods that have come and go, but we have been the Northwestern podcast in that space for all that time. I mean, so again, you're talking over a decade and a half, and the stuff that we've seen happen over that period of time, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, obviously has been seismic. But I think we've worked to build our relationship within that community. It's a tight community. It's a small community. And we've been fortunate enough that through the tailgate we run, that's kind of like adjacent to the pod, a part of the pod, that we interact with a lot of people. We've been fortunate to interact with a lot of coaches. We had our new athletic director, Mark Jackson, on the pod earlier this year. So it's a mix of kind of everything. We love to talk football. We got into it for the same reason you did, to talk Big Ten football. Like, that's what we're about. But as it's grown, our connection to the community and all the different sports within the community has grown a lot. And that's really shaped a lot of what we do with the pod.
I think that's one of the things I love about you guys too, is like, I think, for me, I'm not like, we have our online community, but you guys have really fostered a lot of relationships within that community. And Northwestern is such a niche market, right? And program. And you guys are alums, right? Westlot Pirates is I remember you telling me about the name. It's because you guys are in the Westlot. Like, that's where your tailgate was, right?
Right. I mean, by point of reference, we had the Northwestern softball coach, Kate Drohan, on last week, and we have known her forever because we tailgated next to the softball tailgate in the West Lot of Ryan Field for years and years and years. And it's like, those are the kind of relationships that are built kind of within this community. And frankly, over the past 3 or 4 years, as I think most people in the nation are aware, like, our community's gone through some stuff, right?
Yep.
In an athletic standpoint. And I think the kind of situation where there are conversations going on and you hate to say it, but like battle lines being drawn and things like that, where the ability to be out in the community is really key. That someone feels like they can come to you and be like, yeah, let's powwow about this straight up, because I agree with you on this and I don't agree with you on this. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're talking face to face and you hash it out and everyone's the better for it. So yeah, we've been super fortunate in that regard, that the community's small enough that you can kind of get your arms around it like that.
Yeah. So cool. And I think it's a good reminder for our listeners, just the value of having you come on and share your experience in that community. Because again, I think a lot of people, they know a lot about the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, right? I think we're often naive to Northwestern. And so I think for you to come on and to share your experience and what you're seeing in the program, there's a lot of excitement for 2025 for sure. And we'll hint at that a little bit later on. But before we get there, we're about 3 months removed from 2024. We're kind of doing an autopsy of each team, or at least several of the teams in the Big Ten. Kind of now that we've had some air to breathe, how do we actually analyze this? How do we actually kind of think about this? And so obviously Northwestern finished 4-8. Disappointment in some ways. I think it's easy to criticize that, but there were some key moments too that were like, okay, I think Northwestern's still on track. For you, what highlights made you feel like Coach Braun still has things moving in the right direction?
Well, I think obviously, like, you kind of said it off the top. We're like, obviously you have a lot of casual fans listening right now who aren't super plugged into Northwestern fans. And then you have our pod fans who are going to come in and be like, I mean, a lot of our people are going to be like, look, it's not like, it's not like David Braun was covered in glory last season in terms of like what went on. I think in terms of, if you're looking to Northwestern fans, and again, this is not to say Northwestern fans are out on David Braun, because they're not. I wouldn't say that at all. But I'd say Northwestern fans are very like measured in their judgment. I think in terms of positives, Braun is really strong on defense, and the decision to promote Tim McGarrigle to coach defense was a great decision. And I think that there's a lot of cohesiveness there. You can extend it to Christian Smith on the defensive line, who we pulled in from South Dakota State a couple of years ago, preceded Zach Lujan, who I know we're going to talk about coming in from South Dakota State. There's just a lot of really good coaching there. And I think that the feeling is, despite all of the turnover and everything that's happened in the program in the past couple of years, there is that really solid like defensive bedrock there right now. And that you can look at like the depth of talent and the diversity of talent across the defensive line. There are still like a lot of pieces in the linebacker core. And you can look at last season and be like, okay, this was a team that could go and be like, look, we have Xander Mueller at linebacker. We have Mac Uline at linebacker. We have a lot of great pieces in the secondary. Darren Johnson, who has transferred out now, but being like, that was one of the top corners in the conference last year. And the defensive line without, and really, and we wish we had that guy, that single game wrecker on the defensive line that could dictate anything, play to play. Right. But what we did have were a really deep group with a lot of different pieces, where a lot of different guys brought a lot of different things. And those were kind of like the key positives. Then you did have moments. I mean, obviously, like the Maryland game being the biggest one, where things are clicking on offense in terms of you're getting chunk plays and we're getting turnovers, and then we run away with them. And at the time, I think that's something that a lot of people would have circled and be like, oh, this is a really positive indicator. Now, at the end of the day, we know those are arguably the two, with Purdue, the worst teams in the conference at the end of the season. So like, it's not like that one carried a lot of luster until the end of the year. But I think probably as sad as it is to say, if we're talking like a raw positive moment, week one is the moment. Because you had a Miami of Ohio team that had really high expectations, and then kind of went in the tank a little bit after they played us, but then very much got it back together and were awesome by the end of the MAC season, played for a MAC title, I believe, and kind of by the end of the season, we're showing the full potential that led everyone to think so highly of them in the preseason. So that was a really big game for us in week one. It was also the debut of our glorious Lakeside Stadium. The weather was incredible. So we come out, we get this big non-conference win on a beautiful day where like we know the entire nation's looking at this and being like, holy crap, that looks good. And then we win. That was the highlight. But I mean, we can get into it, but I mean, within a few weeks of that, the construction of the team on the offensive side of the ball was completely different. And, as sad as it is to say, I mean, injuries were a part, but there's a lot of different pieces to it, but things went downhill big time offensively. And I think because of that, people are looking back and being like, gosh, like if we can only get back to where we were week one of last season. But I mean, again, the team went through so many twists and turns, particularly on the offensive side of the ball as the season progressed, that, those are the big moments in a season that, really didn't have too many highlights at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it's it makes sense that you say that one of the biggest highlights was Miami of Ohio. I think maybe the biggest disappointment was the following week where Northwestern had, I think, a win in the bag against an okay Duke team. You know, it would have been a good win, but I think what was really highlighted in that, obviously there were other personnel issues too, but I think the quarterback position was just a weakness all year with Mike Wright and Jack Lausch. Talk about that a little bit. What was it? What was that quarterback competition like as you saw it? And well, just start there with
Sure.
Lausch and Wright.
Well, so we were talking a little bit, before we went live, and I know one of the guys that you had mentioned in a question was Brendan Sullivan, who of course
Yeah.
played this whole season at Iowa, and I loop him into this here because I know one of the questions you have, one of the questions a lot of people have is, okay, so where, what if Brendan Sullivan had stayed? Would this team have been better off? And as we talked about a ton, especially in the back half of the season, it's so hard to make any, because like here's a point. By the time we played Iowa, where Brendan Sullivan played a lot in that game and had some
Mhm.
success against us running the football, it would be really easy for any Northwestern fan at that moment to be like, I wish we would have Brendan Sullivan in that moment right now, because the one thing we need to be doing is running with the quarterback. And for various reasons, we're not doing that. And if there's one thing Brendan Sullivan will do, it is tuck that football and run. He loves
Mhm.
nothing more. And this is the massive but. By the time we were to that point, the quarterback position had gone through so many twists and turns that we were so far removed from where we thought we'd be at the start of the season that you can't really, like, there was no Northwestern fan being like, well, boy, like if we only had Brendan Sullivan, because it was just, we were so down. We had made 3 left turns, 2 right turns. We were on some country road 10 miles from the highway. Like that just wasn't the plan. So you mentioned the
Mhm.
Duke game, and the Duke game is where it all kind of went sideways because, as you said, yeah, on one hand, the game was really close. And on the other hand, on one hand, Zach Lujan, he did not paint a Mona Lisa this past season. He had a lot of things stacked against him, but we were obviously very high on him coming in, and it did not go well. And I think if you ask Northwestern fans what's their primary memory from the Duke game, it's the play call in overtime that went so
Mhm.
horribly wrong one play before we effectively lost the football game. We did lose the football game, where it was just like a QB run that everything went sideways. It was a play call that shouldn't have been called. The play went as badly as it could gone. It was a situation where the one thing you couldn't do was lose yardage, and we lost a massive chunk of yards. But from a larger standpoint, I think the real impact of the Duke game was it revealed that Mike Wright, for all of his tremendous raw gifts as a quarterback, just the synthesis with the offense just wasn't there. The degree
Mhm.
to which he was following what was drawn up, and then the degree to which he was trying to force. And again, that game was close. We could have easily had 4 or 5 more turnovers than we did in that game. And on tape, it screamed that, it was close. We could have lost that game massive to Duke because we almost turned it over 5 more times. So it was so jarring. And also, so you have the performance on tape coming out of that game is just so jarring. But it had been a super close quarterback competition. Everyone said that. Through the spring into the summer, it was really 1A, 1B. And
Mhm.
the other piece of it being there are so many things. Jack Lausch is just a generally beloved guy. He is beloved at Northwestern. He's a local kid. He's a really great kid, which isn't to say Mike Wright. Mike Wright is also, and Mike Wright has remained loyal to this program ever since he showed up. They're both great. Lausch is, again, local from Southside. He is just, there is no one. He is at all times demonstrating that he wants to do nothing more than what you tell him to do. He wants to work within the system and make it work. It's just tough for him. The downfield passing game was not coming together for a lot of the
Mhm.
season. And it seemed like he would make a couple of steps forward and then a couple of steps backward. And not to throw Jack Lausch under the bus, like Zach Lujan was kind of wanting in this regard also, because I think it became clear 4 or 5 games into the season that it's like, look, whatever you drew up, whatever you thought it was going to be, we're not going to get that this season. But we have the ability, for example, we have a really fleet-footed quarterback with a real ability to run. And then I think, and this is something Northwestern fans are really familiar with, there was this 4 or 5 game stretch where it was glaringly obvious that the most effective thing the Northwestern offense could do was QB runs through jaws, through scrambles, through QB run options, etc. And we were just not doing it. And then we would do it and it would be effective. And then we wouldn't do it for another game. There was one game where Jack Lausch had, I think, 1 carry. I want to say that might've been the Wisconsin game. And it was a mixture of him just not being able to get it to click and the offense not forcing him to do it. But then it became a situation where you've made that switch. You don't want to go back. You've invested. There is this whole thing, talking about the Northwestern community. There is this whole thing within Northwestern that we just have not developed a quarterback in forever. Clayton Thorson was the last homegrown guy that we brought in and then developed. Every other recent success has been transfers. And we're going to be leaning on that next season too. But there was that look, hey, let's try to do it. Let's finally try to do it. And then you got a guy who's really working hard to try to get it in Jack Lausch, and you're just not getting there. And then you factor in the fact that our entire interior of our offensive line, we played most of the rest of the season with 3 different guys at the interior than we had on week 1, all because of injury issues. And it all just snowballed, and that's the thing. And then when it wasn't clicking at the quarterback position, you're running out of options really quickly because you're not getting the power run attack in the middle that Lujan's used to. And it all went sideways. And that's, we had the worst offense in the Big Ten, and that's at the root of it.
I think it's helpful too that you brought up the offensive line injuries, because even if you're a good quarterback, if you have no line to block, and we saw this at Michigan at times. We saw it with Ohio State when they lost a couple of offensive linemen. It doesn't matter how good you are at quarterback. If your line gets hurt, things go sideways. And then if you're a quarterback that needs to develop and grow, it's really helpful to hear you process that even about Brendan Sullivan, because I think, again, casuals, I think we try to follow Northwestern, but it's easy to make that jump. And I think you're absolutely right that it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it too, and this is the Lujan piece, because again, there is definitely a wing of Northwestern fandom that's going to watch this show and be like, you better tear into Zach Lujan, because you guys were on Lujan corner and you've been Pollyannish about guys before, and then it didn't work out. And it's like, we very much, Lujan was like a wonderkind. He was 29 when he came in. I don't know if he's 30 now or what, but he, and I do believe that he is this real wizard of a guy. But, and this folds right into the offensive line piece, he's coming from South Dakota State, where at the FCS level, they had a dominant offensive line. Week to week, they're expecting a advantage in the trenches. Not only that, they have put multiple running backs into the NFL over the past couple of years, and those dudes were all huge. You're talking like 6 foot, 220, like big dudes, and not just one, more than one. And then I think either last year or the year before, they also have a quarterback who's like 230 pounds, in addition to Mark Gronowski, one of the best quarterbacks in the FCS, who's going to be at Iowa next year. Yep. So they had all of those pieces, and their whole offense was very much based on hammer you, deep ball, or hammer you, Gronowski makes a dynamic play, etc. And particularly once the interior of our offensive line got messed up, you factor that in with, like, we've got Cam Porter, who's solid, but our number 2 back, Joe Hyman, who's an incredibly dynamic player, talking about a guy who's like 5'11", 185. Like, that's just, we weren't built that way. Like, we weren't. Yep. And the thing is, I think if people who are mad at Zach Lujan be like, look, when this thing went sideways and it was like, look, the perfectly running machine that you had at South Dakota State, that ain't here right now. One thing, and to your audience, because I know you have a lot of Buckeye fans, the one thing that we highlighted a lot that was something that I think made a lot of Northwestern fans really got our goat was, that by the end of the first half of that game, Ohio State was running away because your offense, it is what it is. But we went 93 yards for a touchdown against the best defense in the country in the first half of that football game. And if you watch how it happened, there's no mystery or magic to it. It's great play calling based around the QB delay draw. And we ran it a couple times. We caught the best defense in the country flat-footed on it. It seemed like it was really working. Then the game, in the blink of an eye, got away from us because your offense is so flipping good. And then I think the feeling was, okay, but we learned something. And then we just didn't go to that well at all against Michigan the week after. And that's coming off a whole period of time where, as I was saying, there was a lot of consternation that's like, we're not utilizing the quarterback run enough here. And then there was this glorious drive where it all works perfectly. And then everyone's like, how come we're not doing this anymore? I think if you're talking about frustrations with Lujan, that's where they originate. The feeling that when things went sideways, we didn't adjust. But again, like you said, offensive line gets screwed up. But then if you're used to just being able to crush teams, it's an adjustment. You have to adjust.
Well, there's something to that too. You said that Lujan, I think he's going to be 30. Is there a bit of it too, where maybe you kind of get in your own head and you get a little too cute? Like, do you think it was some of that too, where it's like, I know how this works, and it's like, oh, I don't actually.
Maybe. So the other thing, it's not like Braun's pretty young too.
Yeah.
And we have a nucleus of guys where it's like Christian Smith, like our defensive line coach, Tim McGarrigle, our DC. He's probably like, 40, 41, something like that. That makes him an elder statesman. Now you have Harlan Barnett, who is a true like elder statesman, Bill O'Boyle, like a couple of guys. But if you're talking about like Braun, McGarrigle, Lujan, like by football standards, these are young guys. Yeah. And I think because of Braun's Herculean effort in year one, where he got 8 wins out of that team in the face of everything that was going on and everything, it's easy to forget that. I mean, this is his second year as a head coach at anyone. And I think you're going to see errors like that. And we had a couple, different kinds of errors where it's like, oh, I can't believe we called that call. I can't believe we did this. I can't believe we had this clock stoppage issue. And it's like, those things are going to happen. Like there's some things that you just have to experience within live football and then learn from the school of hard knocks and then be like, well, I'm never going to do that in a game again. But, so there's that. I mean, I don't think there's anyone I don't think there was anyone who felt last season like, oh, Lujan's too big for his britches. He's out there like trying to hot dog it. I think it was more just being like, he's young and this went sideways and he wasn't equipped to adjust, at least in the moment. And again, we really hope it doesn't go sideways again, but you hope that he learns from that and gets more into his bag of tricks. So again, if there's another season like this on the top of last season, Zach Lujan's not going to have many friends in the building. But again, I think we're all hoping that there's going to be a massive shift here.
Yeah. And we'll get to maybe the glimmers of hope there in a minute. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back to talk a little bit into the future. So we'll be back in a minute.
Homefield is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Homefield brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Homefield digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description.
Welcome back to the Big Ten Huddle. Make sure you check out Homefield, TBTH, the code to use for 15% off. Really great apparel.
This wasn't planned. I think I'm dripping in Homefield right now for what it's worth.
So if you want some sweet Northwestern threads, there's your place. Go to Homefield, man. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we did not plan that. That was So you're starting to go there, talking about Lujan next season. And obviously moments, right? And I was going to bring this up too, like the glimmers of hope. You guys played 2 playoff teams and you played them tight for a bit, right? Ohio State, you had the great drive. Indiana was close for at least 2.5 quarters.
Yeah,
You
that was one of our
played,
best games.
yeah, you guys played the schedule you guys played. The degree of difficulty went up from the year before, which is still not an excuse, but it's the new world Big Ten. Here's my question, because you were talking about how things went sideways. We're going to go a little bit more 2025 than I generally want to, but I think it's important for the context of this conversation. You talked about things going sideways. There's a lot of transfers coming in, which is very new. Talk about how that maybe brings hope to the Northwestern fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who is outside of the Northwestern program, who's asking a question is like, well, okay, so after this season, how are Northwestern fans feeling about David Braun? The transfer piece has to be linked to that. And I think you should, like, I'm so glad you brought it up, because there's really no precedent whatsoever for what has happened in the portal for Northwestern this year. None. And I think the casual fan understands, but like, oh yeah, but you guys have brought in a couple, Ben Bryant, Peyton Ramsey, like you guys brought in a couple big time transfer quarterbacks that really went well for you. Yes, but we got like 10 guys coming in. It's like, and I mean like impact players, guys who are going to get real minutes. There's no precedent for that at Northwestern. And there are a couple different reasons for that. The historic academic standards of the university and the way that has not just been a barrier to recruiting a lot of times, but like has really affected us in the portal. Timing, the winter portal was always a horrible fit for Northwestern because of the academic schedule and the rigidity of the Northwestern admissions department relative to transfers. Our new athletic director, Mark Jackson, came in. This was a huge point of emphasis that I think he came in and was like, grab the bull by the horns here. It's like, we cannot compete unless we get around on this. And with Braun firmly behind him, and they were able to loosen that up. And I think a lot of people at the end of the season, there was a lot of hand wringing within Northwestern. We lost. I mean, if you look at the numbers, you'd be like, you guys didn't lose anybody to the portal. But for Northwestern, we're looking and we're like, we lost Theron Johnson and Devin Turner, 2 starters in the secondary, and Josh Thompson, a phenomenal offensive lineman, to big programs. I mean, you've got Johnson going to Oregon. Theron Johnson going to Oregon. Josh Thompson is probably going to start for LSU next year. Like, those are huge losses. So the numbers aren't big, but Northwestern fans wring our hands over that because we're like, I don't know how we replace those guys, because Northwestern can't get guys in through the portal because we've always been hamstrung by this. And they opened it up, and a veritable flood of quality players has come in. And so for I think the average Northwestern fan, does some, salve for the wound really quickly, because everyone's going like, whoa, look at all these guys who want to come play for Braun, and like big time players. And I think we talked about the injuries on the offensive line. It's just offensive line who came out of the season being like, look, like this was a unit that was ravaged by injuries. And then Josh Thompson, our best, our most versatile guy. I think a lot of people would say Caleb Tiernan's our top guy at left tackle, but maybe our most versatile lineman, Thompson's leaving. How are we ever going to replace these guys? And then we get this, for us, again, a veritable wealth of riches coming in through the portal, specifically at offensive line, to say nothing of Preston Stone, who's a guy who I think even a casual fan may know that Northwestern got Preston Stone through the portal. So it's like, there's this feeling that like, look at all these guys who want to come be a part of this program. And that's been a really positive indicator for us.
Yeah. And I think it's important. There's a couple things in there that I think are really important. One is that I think at a program like Northwestern, often you're concerned about depth, especially along the lines.
Right.
The defensive line and the offensive lines are both reasonably stacked for the first time in a long time that I can remember.
I mean, furiously knocking wood relative to the offensive line on this conversation, because again, we're obviously pulling a bunch of guys through. It is a situation though, where you can look and you can be like, I'm doing the math. I mean, we may have three new starters on the offensive line, all quality starters, all through the portal. And there's obviously going to be a really thorough conversation, but to your point, it's like we need more than just like pulling in quality guys with playing experience. We need bodies because like injuries tend to go wrong for us. And honestly, I think a lot of Northwestern fans would juxtapose between the offensive and defensive line for the past couple of years as evidence of that and be like, look, the defensive line has been able to build up some real depth. And yeah, we may not have that single guy, right? Like Ohio State has multiple of these guys, but we may not have that single guy where it's like, that's a first round game wrecker at end, let's say, or at tackle. And around him, you have a lot of key role player pieces. We pretty much just have the role player pieces, but we got a ton of them and they can all do a lot of different things. And I think that some of the things probably because we saw it break right the season before, but I think there is a lot of feeling that like, particularly with the defensive line, that eventually, you have games like Ohio State, Michigan in particular, where like you're just getting kneecapped by the offense and eventually just the dam gives way, right? And just the roof caves in eventually, and you just start getting gashed up the middle. But yeah, the depth is huge. And for us to pull in all of those guys, I mean, it's not just the offensive line and it's not just all caps Preston Stone. It's like we've got two young wide receivers. I mean, we brought in South Dakota State, one of the FCS's best wide receivers. He may be WR1 for us at the start of next season, for all we know. And he's young, and there's no precedent for that at Northwestern. If we were getting a guy in years past, he had a degree in hand, or we weren't getting him. So it's a brave new world. But I mean, if you talk about optimism with Braun, that's where a ton of it comes from.
Yeah, and I think. Real quick, and then I want to get you out with a question about expectations for next year. I think, and you can talk about this too, but Preston Stone, I think a lot of people don't understand why there's excitement with Preston Stone. He got Wally pipped, right? Like he was the starter for SMU, had a great year in 2023. I mean, I think it was over 3,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns to 6 picks. Really, the only reason why he didn't finish out the season was he got hurt, and then Kevin Jennings took over.
Right.
But people need to understand, this is not the backup of SMU coming in. Like, he is a legit starter.
The amount of press on tape I've mainlined, but this is one of the best deep ball throwers in college football. There are not more than 4 guys who throw a better deep ball in college football than this guy. That's not my opinion. That's a generally held opinion. If you ask SMU fans, they'll tell you that. He has weaknesses in his game, but his strength is one of maybe the hardest thing to do in football, which is throw an accurate deep ball. I hope we can use that and put it all together. I mean, again, I know on paper, Lujan wants to hammer you and throw deep. Well, there ain't no one throwing deep better than this guy. We're going to have to see it all come together. And of course, we're in spring ball right now and coaches are saying all the right things, open competition, etc. Look, like it's Preston Stone. Okay. Right. But he's a guy with all the tools in the world and a guy who, again, he's to everything you were saying, like, right. He got Wally pipped a little bit. It's all just, you can go through and as we've joked before, you can go through as an SMU fan and all the shoulda, woulda, couldas and the whole line of things that led to Stone losing his job to Kevin Jennings. But as a Northwestern fan, like we've had to ride that train within our program too many times. I'm not trying to ride someone else's train. We have Preston Stone. That's all I care about. Okay. Like that all worked out great for us. I got no complaints. This guy is an absolute rocket launcher for an arm. We've got him at Northwestern next year.
Yeah. And I think it's exciting. And I think it leads to this maybe, again, looking at the 2025, obviously Pat Fitzgerald, not the coach anymore. It's David Braun, but it seemed like the last few years under Fitzgerald, it was like 3-9 and then 9-3. So yeah.
You asked us this question a couple of days ago, and it led me to crunch the numbers, and I'm going to give you the stats on this.
Okay,
so
go for it.
There are if you're a casual fan, you're probably going to be amazed by this. And if you're a Northwestern fan, you're going to be terrified by this. But here are the numbers. If we look over the past 20 years of Northwestern football, this will be the 10th time in the past 20 years that Northwestern's coming off a non-winning season. So 6-6 or worse. Okay. This will be the 10th time Northwestern's coming off a season like this. Of those 9 times preceding this one was 2022 when we went 1-11. Here's the other 8 seasons. Across those 8 seasons, Northwestern won 62 games. Average season 8-4, including 2 10-win seasons, 3 other seasons that ended with bowl wins over Auburn, Utah, Mississippi State, and a Big Ten West championship. That's the resume this season has to live up to, which again, also 2022 when we went 1-11. But yes, historically, over the past 20 years, Northwestern has done very well after seasons like the one that we just had. And again, that's a lot of pressure to have to live up to. I don't think any Northwestern fans going to be wringing their hands any less. But yeah, the numbers are the numbers. We tend to be one of the very best teams in the country after a bad season.
Yep. So yeah, I think that encapsulates my thoughts. Exactly. It's like and you look at the schedule. The schedule is not for the faint of heart, right? You guys go to Tulane to start the season, which is trickier.
Yep.
You guys host Oregon and UCLA. You go to Happy Valley. You go to USC. And you host Michigan. So it's and Illinois is good now.
Yeah, that's one of the things, right? It's having Illinois up does us no favors. I think every Northwestern fan is looking and being like that, if you look at the games that we get at home, it's a pretty favorable slate. You get away with that, or with Oregon kind of being an outlier. You get away from that, it gets really tricky really quickly. Obviously, picking up that Tulane game would be huge for us. Yep. Being able to run the slate at home, maybe accepting an Oregon would be hugely helpful for us. Obviously, 6 and above, any Northwestern fans looking at that as a step in the right direction. So, but again, like we said, the team is going to be so different. And then again, that's not to say that it's all these transfers coming in and that's the team now. We got a ton of guys on this team. There's a lot of guys looking to get out and show out on the field. There's just a lot of talent. And now, as we speak in the Ryan Fieldhouse, it's all mixing together, right? All these guys are fighting for jobs, but it is going to be a drastically different looking team that comes out next fall. There's no doubt about it. So yeah. But with that same pressure of 20 years of Northwestern's record.
Oh man. It's been an exciting 20 years for sure. And I don't know. I have not that we go about gut feels, but I got a good gut feeling. But
knocking wood, furiously.
Yeah. John, where can we find you on socials? Where can we find the podcast?
Westlot Pirates. Our website, westlotpirates.com, but Westlot Pirates, you'll find us everywhere. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get us. Every social media, we're on there. Blue Sky is one that we added this year. We've really upped our Blue Sky presence, to go with our Twitter presence, but we're on Instagram. We're everywhere. Westlot Pirates, you'll find us. We're not hard to find.
Yeah. So the deal is, for all you Big Ten Huddle listeners, go follow, go get the best Northwestern content out there. It legit is. And we're just so grateful that we can be part of the same community in the College Huddle. John, thanks for coming on. We're gonna close out here, but thanks for listening. We will see you next time on the Big Ten Huddle.